It's time for The Verdict. The Verdict is a lively discussion of current events and legal issues pertinent to Oklahomans. The Verdict is hosted by Kent Meyers and Mick Cornett. The Verdict is brought to you in part by Betcher, Martin, Jean, and Jackson, when hurt people need help. Betcher, Martin, Jean, and Jackson in Ponca City. It's time for The Verdict.
And welcome to The Verdict. I'm Kent Meyers, and we're pleased you could join us again this Sunday morning. My co-host, Mick Cornett, is not able to be with us this week, but will return next week. Today we're going to be talking about a subject that every single one of you that is watching this show today needs to know something about. If you're close to retirement age, you probably already know something about Social Security. If you're not, it's not too young to start learning about it. We're going to be talking with Larry Jones today, the representative of the Social Security Administration, who's going to bring us information that I think you'll find quite interesting and, quite frankly, quite necessary. So what I'd like for you to do is sit back. We're going to take a short commercial break here in just a second. Perhaps get a pencil and paper out because you're going to find some things you may want to jot down, telephone numbers, ages, etc. But sit back and relax. Thanks for joining us on The Verdict. We'll be back in just a second with Larry Jones. Back to The Verdict. We're pleased you join us this Sunday. As I indicated in the first segment, Mick Cornett will be back with us next Sunday. Today we're going to be talking about something that everybody needs to know about. And while you may have some basic information about it, we hope that this show today will give you a lot more useful information. And we've got somebody with us today that can do that. Across the table from me, we're really pleased to have join us Larry Jones, who's a public affairs specialist for the Social Security Administration. Larry is a native Oklahoman, graduated from the Southern Nazarene University, and has been with the Social Security Administration 19 years. He's made numerous presentations informing the public about important information about Social Security. This is his first appearance on The Verdict, and Larry, we're really pleased you have come today, and we hope you'll come back in the future.
Well, Ken, thank you very much. It's great to be with you today, and I hope we can cover a lot of good information that, as you said earlier, will be very valuable.
Well, I think so. Let's get started.
Okay.
It seems from most people's perspective that Social Security just applies to older people. Is that correct?
That's not correct. I believe that is the conception, and we might take a look at the history of Social Security to kind of bring this thing to the forefront. For example, in 1935, President Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act, and I think at that point, the goal was to provide benefits to older Americans who were suffering from the Depression in the middle 1930s and even after that. But as time went on, it became quite apparent to Congress and the President and to other administrations down through the years that Social Security needed to be much more of a program. For example, in 1939, we added the survivors part of Social Security. That's for the widows, the widowers, and the children that have survived someone who has passed away. Another big part of our timeline came along in 1956 with Social Security Disability. And this is the program right now at the local office here in Oklahoma City or in Moore or all over the state of Oklahoma that we're dealing with now from the baby boom generation. This is a group of people born between 1946 and 1964. I'm a baby boomer, and there are many more of us out there across the nation. But that particular program is getting a lot of attention right now because a lot of baby boomers, those that are paying the bills for the United States, are applying for disability in large numbers. So that's another big program. The final two would be Medicare in 1965. President Johnson signed that Social Security part of the regulations, the health insurance program. And the final part came along in 1972 with what we call SSI, or Supplemental Security Income. And that's a federal welfare program that we probably won't talk about much today. But those are the five major parts of our program. It started, as you said, with retirement, but we added on many other parts to the program. And so we have a very large federal agency under the Social Security umbrella today.
Well, let me focus just a minute on the Oklahoma City office, and I take it that's where you're based.
That's right. I'm out of Oklahoma City.
Where is it located?
We're in the Old Shepherd Mall, if you know where that is, Oklahoma's first mall in 1964. We're in the old street store, for those of us that remember Social Security and Shepherd Mall.
That's basically 23rd and Villa.
23rd and Villa, that's where we are right now. A large office. We have about 65 employees there.
I'm not meaning to just throw compliments around here without justification, but I've heard a number of people say that a visit to the Social Security office was a complete shock, a complete surprise, because of the timeliness, the hospitality, and the efficiency of the workers there, and that isn't something you hear often in relation to government programs. Tell us about that.
Well, that is right. We do have a system involved, and just to give you an example, we run about 200 people through our office every day. It's a very large Social Security office. That would compete with any office nationwide. But, for example, if you have an appointment at 10 o'clock in the morning, you've arranged this over the 800 number, and you are coming in to apply for disability or retirement benefits, we're going to meet with you. There's going to be a representative waiting for you at 10 o'clock. So if a person does their homework in advance and makes the arrangements beforehand, it's a system that does work very well, and we're proud of our reputation and the fact that we are, in fact, a true public service agency.
Well, that seems to be everything that I've heard. That is consistent with everything I've heard. Well, you mentioned a number of different programs, but basically, how old does someone have to be in order to derive or receive Social Security benefits?
Very good question. I think we need to talk about the fact that there are some different ages involved. But if we're talking about Social Security retirement benefits, our number one benefit, 70% of the people nationwide draw Social Security retirement. And the earliest age that you can get that benefit is age 62. If you have stopped work at 62, or if you've cut back at the age of 62, we can help you. We can take a claim, and we can get you set up at that age. There are many other ages involved with retirement. For example, if you want to get Medicare, the earliest we can help out on that is age 65. But that's retirement. If you're talking about survivors benefits, and we have a lot of widows across the nation right now.
And widowers.
Widowers, but it's mainly widows. I wanted to point that out. It's about 100 to 1 on our rolls. Widows over widowers, an amazing statistic. But a widow or widower can receive benefits as early as the age of 60. Kind of an obscure age, but one that we like to get out because there are a lot of widows out there who may be single, may be 60, and may not be aware that because their husband has passed away and paid into Social Security that they can qualify for that benefit. If we're talking about disability, for example, one of our major programs, as we talked about earlier, there really is no minimum age. If you're working, and let's say you're 21, you've had an auto accident or an illness, you've paid into Social Security, we can help you at that age. 45, 58, 27, whatever the age might be, if you've paid into Social Security and you meet the qualifications medically, we can help you at that time. So the point is, while we talk a lot about age 62, this is truly an intergenerational program. We can help people that are 21 plus their grandparents or their parents. We get to help a lot of people with our benefits at Social Security.
Just in the brief time we have left before we go to a break, tell us about this thing you receive in the mail once in a while called a Social Security statement. Just briefly, what is that, and should we keep them? Should we look at them? What should we do with them?
I feel like the Social Security statement is the most important public information tool that we have ever come up with at Social Security. The bottom line is this: if you're over the age of 25 and you are working, every year about 3 months before your birthday, you're going to get a statement from Social Security. And it's going to give you a breakdown of your record. How much have I paid into the program? What could I expect to draw at certain different ages? For example, at retirement, if I became disabled, what would be left for my survivors if I passed away? The statement has all of this outlined on it. It's a very important financial document. And my message regarding the statement is this: hold on to this. This is a very important document. Keep it with your tax papers, your will, your other important papers, because you're going to refer back and forth to that in order to get information that you can use for your future financial planning.
Thanks. We're talking with Larry Jones, the Special Administrator of Information for Social Security Administration. We'll be back in just a second. Stay with us. We've got more good information for you. Welcome back. Kent Meyers with Larry Jones talking about Social Security, what you need to know, what you must know, and we hope things that you haven't known prior to the show. Larry, during the campaign 4 years ago for presidency, President Bush talked about a plan to allow individual workers to privately invest some of their earnings in lieu of paying it into the Social Security system trust fund. What's the status of that? What's the likelihood that that's going to happen in the near future, and what do you think about that?
Well, this is a wide open issue, and one probably that we need to address today. It was about 3 years ago, shortly after the campaign, that President Bush assigned a commission to look in to changing Social Security, to bringing it more up to date according to his guidelines and so forth. And one of the things that he mentioned in that plan was, one of the guidelines that the commission had to work with is, I would like to come up with personal retirement investment accounts. There's many different titles that have been used as far as that's concerned. The proposal that I think is probably more on the table right now than any other is to perhaps take 2% of your Social Security investment, give it back to an individual, and allow them to invest that money into a limited range of investment opportunities that would be determined at a later time. The thinking behind that is, one, that would give a person a real asset, a pocket of money, so to speak, that they could use in the event that they passed away or became disabled, or hopefully they could use that in retirement. If something like that were ever to come about, there would be an agreement on the table that by accepting the 2% reduction in your investment into Social Security, that would also reduce your Social Security benefit, but you would have this perhaps a smaller check coming from this other source of income that you've invested into. We have nothing more concrete on that than we had at that time. The stock market seems to have come into play as far as the rhetoric on this issue is concerned. But yes, it is definitely out there as a possibility. The way that I read this is that the older people that are actually on Social Security or so close to Social Security entitlement are opposed to this for reasons of their own. The younger people that I talk with around the Oklahoma City and the metro area seem to think it's a good idea, because this is a generation today that has a much stronger handle on their financial future. They're into what is investing into mutual funds or the stock market or some type of safe investment or 401ks. There's many different titles there. So it really hasn't gone much further. I still think it's out there on the table. And of course the commission, under the direction of the President, recommended this as a possible change for Social Security in the future. We'll just have to see as time goes on whether this thing will come to fruition.
Well, let me change the subject just a minute.
Okay.
I don't know that we have an average worker reaching age 65, but how can our viewers have some idea of what they can expect to draw on, for instance, this age 65 retirement?
Okay. We have a national average and an Oklahoma average, and they're both about the same. The average check paid out in Social Security monthly across the nation is about $900 a month. Now, many people will receive more than that. Those that have paid more into their records, there will be many that have received less. But if you're on disability, a survivor's benefit, or retirement, or whatever it might be, generally you can expect a check of about $900 a month. And I would refer back, Kent, to what you said earlier in the program, this statement from Social Security.
Yes.
If you're saying today, what am I going to get? What can I expect? Well, there are many sources to get that information, but if you'll go to that statement that we have mailed to you over the last few years or however old you might be, that will give you a personalized idea of what your Social Security might be.
Let me ask you a pretty fundamental question here to see if I understand the system. I suppose the amount of benefit is tied to the amount that you have paid in.
Absolutely.
The amount you have paid in is tied to the amount you earn.
Absolutely.
So the higher earners could realistically expect a higher check than someone making not quite so much?
Let me talk a little bit about the computation of Social Security. How do we arrive at our benefit amount? This is an issue that is largely misunderstood. People will say, well, are you basing that on the last 5 years of earnings, or just how do you come up with it? We base our benefit to you based on the high 35 years from your work record. For example, from 1951 to the year 2004, we take 35 years, we index that for inflation.
35 consecutive or just 35?
35 high. It can
so
be,
if you
there
have
can be gaps.
40 years, you'd take the top 35 out of that 40.
And drop the low 5.
Right, okay,
So we come up with, if someone has paid the maximum into the system, into the Social Security fund for the high 35 years, their check is going to be about $1,825 a month this year. That's the high. If you've had lower than that, and most people are lower, you might have a check of $700, $800, $1,200 are possibilities, but that's how we arrive at the benefit that we pay from Social Security.
Okay. One thing that you've mentioned a time or two, and I think has been on the national news a good bit, is the baby boomers' development into Social Security recipients, progress into Social Security. And Alan Greenspan very recently talked about the deficits and the baby boomers' arrival into Social Security and what effect those things might have on the system itself. He's talked about perhaps increasing retirement age or reducing benefits. What are your thoughts about that? What are your ideas about whether that's going to come about?
Again, I would refer back to the commission that President Bush had on the table 3 years ago. And when Alan Greenspan made his comments here just a few weeks ago, it really startled the nation. Not only the people like you and I that are
and the stock market
in the workforce and the stock markets, you're right. Politicians went mum immediately on this issue. But really what Mr. Greenspan was commenting on there was not something that we as an agency have not been aware of and haven't thought about for the last 10 years. Now, let me make it clear that the Social Security Administration does not make the rules. The rules are made by Congress on how we pay our benefits and so forth. But the things that he's talking about raising the retirement age, perhaps changing the way we pay our cost of living adjustments, reducing benefits and all of this, has all been under the umbrella of Social Security for the last several years as things that we are looking at. We understand that with a baby boom generation, we're going to have to make changes in this system to make it solvent for the next 75 years. That is the goal of the agency. So what he said didn't really startle me at all. I don't know that it startled anyone that's in the loop of Social Security would be. I can tell you this, we are not going to reduce benefits for people that are receiving Social Security at this time. There's no way that's going to happen. These individuals that are receiving are counting on that money to meet their needs on a month-by-month basis. That's not going to happen. Any changes that we make with Social Security along the lines that he said, again, we don't know if that will happen, but if it does, it's going to affect the younger people that are coming up through the system, those that would have the opportunity over time to phase in these changes. For example, if we change the retirement age from 62 to 64, someone who's 25 today might say, well, I don't really like that, but at least I can phase that into my way of thinking as time goes on. These are going to be changes that are going to slowly affect the younger people that are coming up right now.
Thank you. Larry, we appreciate so much you coming in today. We're out of time. Would you make me a promise? When new developments occur, would you let me know and we'll get you back on?
I'll absolutely drop you an email and let you know.
We would be delighted to have you. We've been listening to Larry Jones, a public relations spokesman for the Social Security Administration. We hope you've gotten new and good information. Thanks for joining us. I'll be back in just a minute. Thanks again to Larry. We'll see you in just a second. Back. Folks, I want to mention something. Here on The Verdict, we always try to bring you information that we think you would like to hear. And today, I think we've brought you something that you probably need to hear. And we hope it was useful to you. We're really pleased that Larry Jones would join us. And I want to once again bring up the Social Security Administration website and toll-free number and encourage you to call it should you have questions, thoughts, or comments about Social Security or questions about your own participation in it. And once again, thanks to Larry. Also, we want to remind you that we have a Verdict website. You are good about getting on that and letting us know what you think, and we appreciate it, but we hope that you'll get on our Verdict website, theverdict.tv. Let us know what you'd like to hear, and let us know what kind of shows you'd like to see us bring to you. I will remind you that Mick Cornett will be back with us next week. I do want to go back to a quote that we used in the course of Larry's show today, and that is that the people that are interested in Social Security is the only special interest group that encompasses 100% of the U.S. population. That is really, I guess, the biggest special interest group that there is around, and that affects you, me, and everybody we know. So let us know what you'd like to see. We'll be back next week with another interesting version of The Verdict, and we hope to see you then. I'm Kent Myers. Come back and see us. Thanks.